is let's use this opportunity. In the whole Middle East peace process, there have been so many missed opportunities. Let today not be another missed opportunity.
So thank you for your question. I agree with my friend Alexander. I think this ceasefire is a good step forward, but it's not enough. I think that the large majority of the international community agreed that we need a permanent ceasefire, humanitarian ceasefire, and I also would like to highlight that the Security Council, the UN Security Council, also approved the resolution for humanitarian pauses, for humanitarian corridors, and this is binding, and this is mandatory for all member states of the UN. So I hope that this first humanitarian ceasefire is the prelude for a permanent ceasefire, and we can start conversations for peace and for a concrete resolution of this conflict, and that this spiral of violence is stopped, and we can provide peace, security, and all the needs, the humanitarian needs that the people in Gaza needs.
For the two prime ministers, after 2 intense days, and especially after your meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, do you see any possibility for the peace or a peace conference soon? Do you are more optimistic or pessimistic after this travel?
We are realistic, Carlos. Thank you very much for your question. I think that the most important thing is that we go to this peace conference with 2 main goals achieved, or at least on the table. The first one is the permanent ceasefire, the respect for international humanitarian law, which is not the case nowadays, with this disproportionate response taken by the Israel government, and second, with a concrete idea on how to move forward this two-state solution, which could bring peace and security and coexistence for both countries, Israel and Palestine. I think that this is a crucial moment. We are living a momentum where all the international community must be engaged in a solution that could last, a solution that could be fulfilled by both parties, and a solution that could provide the peace, the stability, the security, and the prosperity that people in Gaza, in Palestine, and also in Israel needs.
To add to that, a peace conference can only happen if 2 important steps have been taken. The first step is release all the hostages, and equally so, stop the killing of innocent civilians. That's the priority for the next days, and then we hope that people can start talking one with another.
Public broadcaster VRT. We've seen these hundreds of trucks on the way to the border. What do you think if you see all this aid while it can't go in, it can't go to the people who need it desperately?
Yes. No, please. First of all, I would like to thank the Egyptian authorities and all the people working here for being ready. And what I see here is this side of the border is ready to provide massive aid to people who need it. I can only hope that in the next minutes there is a response on the other side and that aid can get in. Second element, this is for the moment the only access point. We need more access points. We cannot only have an access point on the south side. We also need access points on the north side, which means that there also needs to be access points starting from Israel and not only from Egypt. And we hope that as soon as possible other access points can be opened.
So what we feel, I think that the same feeling that most of the people here that works every day feel. Injustice, frustration. This is not fair. This is not a fair response that the Israeli government should have been taken. I think that the answer should be another one, is the respect for international humanitarian law, the respect for the lives of thousands of children, kids, women and men that are suffering the consequences of this cycle of violence. So I do believe that we need to call upon Israel. Democracies must be must fulfill our obligations with international humanitarian law, and this is something that must be fulfilled by Israel. So my feeling today when I see all these trucks and the suffering of the people in Gaza is frustration, is also injustice, and the need to do, the correct thing to do, which is to provide all this humanitarian aid. Of course, from our side, from the Spanish side, we also announced 4 tons of humanitarian aid, in this case, to the Egyptian government to complement all the needs that the Egyptian government needs for to provide health assistance to the refugees and
Las Heras, Spanish press agency called PISA. First, if you allow me, Prime Minister, in Spanish, Presidente Sánchez. Queríamos preguntar, el presidente Al-Sisi ha trasladado hoy su hartazgo con la promesa de la solución de 2 estados a la que la comunidad internacional lleva aferrándose más de 30 años sin que nada haya cambiado. Usted ha prometido impulsar en la Unión Europea el reconocimiento del Estado palestino. Queríamos preguntarle si estaría dispuesto a que España haga ese reconocimiento de manera unilateral. Y Prime Minister De Croo, the same question for you, please. Do you contemplate a unilateral recognition of the state of Palestine?
I think that the momentum has come for the international community, especially for the European Union and member states, to recognize the state of Palestine. And I think it would be important if many member states of the European Union we do it all together. But if this is not the case, of course, Spain will take their own decisions.
First things first. Let's stop the violence. Let's liberate the hostages. Let's get the aid inside. Let's open more access points. These are the most important elements now. And this is what concretely is helping a population in Gaza that is suffering. So the first priority is help people who are suffering, and that means getting everything that is ready here inside. That's the first priority, and then indeed, as my colleague Pedro Sanchez indicated, then people need to sit around the table, and then things need to be discussed. But let's do first things first, and that's helping people who are in need.
Questions about humanitarian aid to Gaza Strip. A lot of people say that it's not effective without permanent ceasefire, as so many UN organizations cannot operate inside without permanent ceasefire. What are you doing regarding effective humanitarian aid and permanent ceasefire?
So since the beginning of this conflict, we've been very vocal in asking the Israeli authorities to stop and to implement a permanent ceasefire. And this is something that we've been also demanding before the multilateral institutions and before the rest of our allies and friends, different countries. So from our side, we have a very clear position on this, which is to stop the violence, to implement a permanent ceasefire, and to allow the humanitarian aid to enter into Gaza.
As I just said, today we have a temporary ceasefire. A temporary ceasefire becomes a permanent one day after day. And so if every day we liberate more hostages, if every day more help is coming in, this is the first step. And then a permanent one, this is something that needs to be built. That the solution to this conflict is never going to be violence. The solution to this conflict is that people sit around the table. I think everyone on both sides has a huge responsibility for that, and political leaders need to step beyond their own shadow and take decisions which are not easy but necessary decisions to go into peace talks.
Monet from the Belgian television RTL. I have a question maybe a bit more personal. You have spent 2 days in the region. As you are going back to Europe.
I think first of all a lot of hope. If I see so many people here, hundreds of people here who are volunteers and who want to help people who are in need, we can only be extremely hopeful. But being hopeful is not enough. Now a ceasefire, it's up to us to make it work, and that's the message that we bring here. Last message is there has been too much human suffering, and stopping human suffering should be our #1 priority. Stop the fighting, release the hostages, and get the help in. That's the first step, and that's the message that we bring here, and I hope that somewhere in the next hours we can bring it in practice.
To me, I would say 2 images. The first one is a young boy of 18, 19 years old that we met in the kibbutz that we visited yesterday in Israel, which suffered, of course, these terrorist attacks from Hamas, and he was willing to. He came back and he was telling us that he was ready to rebuild his home and to live where he belongs. And the second one is perhaps all these images of a long file of trucks waiting to open these gates and to allow the humanitarian aid to enter into Gaza. So at the end of the day, as Prime Minister De Croo said, hope. And this is what we will work, I'm sure of it, dear friend, for that hope, for the region, the people in Palestine and the people in Israel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.